Hi guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe so that you get all the latest updates. So today we're going to be looking at the questions and answers that you find in Monitoring and Evaluation. So let's get started. All right, so to start with, these are common questions that you always find in exam papers, in assignments, in quizzes. So for those of you who are studying monitoring and evaluation, it could be at a university, at a college, or even at a small school. These are some of the questions that come, and I've done my research. I'm very positive these are the questions. So something I have to tell you, this is quite a long video. So if you want to go straight to a particular question, go to the description, just click on the timestamp and you'll be taken straight to that question in this video. Okay, so this is quite a long video, so that's why if you want a certain question, just go to the description of YouTube and hit that timestamp and you will be taken straight to the answer for that question. So let's get straight to the point, shall we? Who participates in monitoring and evaluation activities? This is the first question. Well, you see, friend, when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, a lot of times people will tell you that it's a responsibility of an M&D officer, an M&D professional, or an M&D coordinator. But the truth is that standard practice when it comes to participatory monitoring and evaluation, it involves not only staff members, but in most cases you need to work with stakeholders, especially if this M&E intervention is of a large scale. So this means that if you're going to do some monitoring and evaluation activities, you can involve community members, members of the community who are affected by the project or could affect the project, because those are key stakeholders. You can also involve the government officials, because government officials, in most cases, when you have them in the project, they are simply there because they have a very large stake when it comes to making policies. They are the policy makers. So they would have an interest in the project, but also whatever policies they come up with can affect the project. So you have to involve the donors, you have to involve the government officials, you have to involve community members and also staff members who are actually implementing the project. Okay, let's go to the next question. Question 2. When undertaking monitoring and evaluation activities, why are key performance indicators important? So I've done a lot of videos on key performance indicators, and if you want to know more of these videos, please go just browse through my channel, look for those videos. There are so many videos of key performance indicators. So why are key performance indicators important? Because M&D officers need information, and they don't just need information alone. We need the right information. So key performance indicators help us get the right information at the right time. So these key performance indicators are simply just telling us whether the project is making progress or not. And when you have this information, you can come up with the right conclusions, and when you have the right conclusions, you can come up with recommendations which can help future programming of future projects. So key performance indicators are important in this sense. So it's really important to ensure that you get or information that is only relevant to these key performance indicators. Question 3. When are monitoring reports actually done? This is another question that can come in a quiz, in an exam, or even an assignment. So usually when they ask a question like this, they are trying to give you that hands-on understanding of when you should do certain things. So let's say you're employed as an M&D officer. That's your first job. The most important thing you should realize is that you have the ability to define some of these activities. And actually, you see, you don't, as an M&D officer, you don't work, you may work under somebody, but really that somebody, that supervisor, that manager, director could be relying on your expertise to define when certain things should be done. So when it comes to monitoring reports, these should be done quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. But much depends really on the availability of resources. Because if you're going to do reports on a quarterly basis, what that means is that you should be in the field on a quarterly basis collecting this information. But the question is, do you have the resources? And when we talk of resources, we're not just talking about time. We're not just talking about money. We're talking about time. We're talking about personnel. We're talking about also, the most important thing is money, really. Money defines everything. So you have to get things right. There's no strict timeline on when monitoring should be done. It can also be done weekly. But the question is money, resources, time, all those things lumped together. So when is evaluation done? Evaluation is done in most cases midway through the project or at the end of the project. So now, if you remember, I've done some videos about what evaluation is. So the evaluation is an activity that is done to determine the extent to which change has happened, or if change has happened at all. So change can be positive, change can be negative, but the point is this has to be documented, this has to be verified, this has to be quantified. How do you do it? The only way you can do it is by conducting an evaluation. So in most cases, the evaluation can be done midterm because for obvious reasons, like if you have a 5-year program, you do it 2 years and some months after the start of the project. And the reason is simple, is because you just want to get the information. Are we doing things the right way? If we are not, why? What can be done to improve so that we can get the targets that we are looking for at the end of the 5 years? But it can get really interesting because at the time when you do this evaluation, if you find out that things are not really the way they should be, this is where now big important decisions should be made. Should we scale up? Should we change stuff? All those things, critical. But evaluations are different. And this is something I also explained in one of my courses, which I'm hosting in one of these websites. There are different types of evaluations. Did you know that a needs assessment is actually a type of evaluation? So, in actual sense, you can have an evaluation done at the start of the project, midway through the project, and at the end of the project. Because I mean, what does a needs assessment do? And it's done at the start. But what is also interesting is that the baseline, when you do a baseline survey, the methodology that you use in a baseline survey is also similar to what you use in an evaluation. So we're just thinking aloud, something for you to critically analyze as you answer this question. It becomes tricky if this question is multiple choice because then you're limited. But if it is open ended, you can explain all those details and you'll find that the marker, the one who's marking your paper, if this is out of 10 marks, he'll give you even the 10 for doing a good reasoning. Another question is, what are data collection tools and why are they developed in monitoring and evaluation? I have to break it to you, friend, that M&E and research are very similar activities. The only difference is that research is mainly trying to, discover new knowledge. But when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, you're not really looking for knowledge. You're just looking for results because there's a project that you're running. So both research M&D use data collection tools, and I'm sure you know what these tools are. These tools can be anything from a questionnaire, or they could be, other tools, online tools that you use to collect information from people. In most cases, these are people who you're asking. So now, these data collection tools are the instruments that you actually use to collect information on the different key performance indicators that are on in the project. So the reason why they are developed is that you need that information. You need to collect it. If you don't collect this information, there's no way you're going to report on anything. And actually, this is where most of the cost of M&D activities goes to. Because if you're going to collect data from a community, you definitely have to be paid for travel, you have to be paid for accommodation, you have to be paid for the meeting, where are you going to meet these people? You need also transportation costs, you need stationery. So this is really where a lot of cost goes. It's in the data collection. Okay, I hope you're not tired if you've reached this far, but remember, in the description below, there are different kinds of questions, but you can click on the timestamps and it will take you to the actual answer where you want to get this question to. So, question 6, can a log frame be used to develop a monitoring and evaluation framework? The answer is a simple yes. And the reason is that if you look at a logical framework, and actually when you see a log frame, it's basically a matrix that's giving you a summary of the project. So that log frame tells you from the activities all the way up to the goals of the project. Okay, so it gives you everything. But the only difference is that the M&D framework is similar even when you look at the two. The only difference is that the M&D framework will go deep now. It's going to explain who is going to be collecting what indicator. So you see in the log frame, usually you have different goals, different outcome objectives really rather. So those objectives translate to the outcomes that this project wants to achieve. So those outcomes have their own set of indicators. And it is at that stage where in the M&D framework, for every indicator, you have it defined who is going to be collecting, analyzing, and reporting that kind of information. So the answer is yes, the log frame can be used to develop an M&D framework. So keep in mind that you need to have an M&D framework. Wherever there's a log frame, there needs to be an M&D framework. I have seen this a lot of times that an organization will have a log frame, but no M&D framework. And it could also be vice versa. Also, another thing I've seen that some organizations will use the M&D framework and log frame interchangeably. But these are two different things. So keep that in mind. Question 6. Is monitoring and evaluation a donor requirement? If you've been watching my videos, I have talked about this. The reason why some people think it is that donors are usually the ones who are pushing the implementing organizations a lot, telling them what to do, when to do it, how the money should be used, so on and so forth. So when it comes to an implementing organization wanting to access funds, they will try to impress the donor and have an M&D system set up just to please the donor. But the truth of the matter, it's not really a donor requirement if you come to look at it. It's an organization project requirement. Every project must have an M&D system. And there are many projects around the world, so many projects. For as long as there's a project, there should be an M&D system. And the reason being is that you want to be able to monitor. You also want to be able to learn. Okay? Because when you learn, what happens? You become more knowledgeable, you become more aware, you become more confident of what you're doing. Unlike when you don't have this information. So the M&D system is designed for that. And it's not really necessarily a donor requirement, but it just has to be there. It should come naturally. The donors shouldn't even ask you whether you have an M&D system. Every organization should have one. So why is it good practice to hire a consultant to undertake an evaluation of a project? So this question comes a lot. I must say that I've seen this question come in a lot of exams, and it may not come in this form. They might say external evaluator. Why do you need an external evaluator to undertake an evaluation of your project? It may come in that form. It is good practice to have these people on board. And the reason being is that consultants are usually the more experienced individuals. Okay, they have the technical expertise to handle this assignment that you give to them. Another thing is that they have undertaken these projects before and they would like to contribute positively to this project. But most importantly, this is the most important reason why they are hired. And the reason is simple: to remove biasness. So biasness is simply you being inclined or prejudiced to a certain thing. So take for instance, if you are the one who implemented the project, and then you're the one at the same time who has to evaluate your own project, your own implementation. Don't you think that you'll be biased? The answer is yes. Even if you don't want to, but you'll be tempted to reflect your project in a positive way, not for what it really is. I remember when I was attending a meeting, this presenter actually talked about the same thing. They hired a consultant expecting that that consultant will sugarcoat how their program has fared in the 5 years. Because internally, you might actually feel that you have done a great job, but the consultant developed a report that explained things the way they were. And you can imagine how people felt after that, seeing that what they thought was beautiful was actually not. So that is where the problem is sometimes. That's why people fear to hire consultants, because consultants are usually critical, but they're doing it, their intentions are good because they want the future project to develop in a positive way. So it's just to remove biasness. And this is a common question that comes a lot in M&D exams. Back to the key performance indicators. So how are key performance indicators developed? This is a very, very good question, and it is hands-on. It's a hands-on question. You know, oftentimes, when someone is hired to be an M&D officer, sometimes they don't even take part in the planning of that project. They just find that the project has been already developed, and they find project documents that have indicators which are not even measurable. All those can be really challenging. So here is the news. In case you don't know how key performance indicators are developed, let me break it out to you. Let me break the ice for you. Key performance indicators are developed at inception of planning of the project. I did a course in one of these websites, and it talks a lot about this. But even on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I've done a video of how key performance indicators are developed. So they are developed really by using the problem and solution tree methodology. Because when you identify the problem, then automatically you would define the solution, and in that solution, you'll be able to say, okay, how do I measure whether this solution has been achieved or not? I'll give you an example. Let's say there are low poverty levels in a certain community. That is a problem. So now the solution to that problem could be having economic empowerment activities for both the men and women. A solution could be having access to finance. All right, such development activities can actually bring in the solution that you want. Actually, when you have these activities, it only leads to one good solution, and that is reduced poverty levels. So now, at the point you're saying, okay, let us have activities for these farmers to have access to finance. At that point, that is where now you brainstorm. How do we measure whether these activities are actually being done? And to do that, you develop obviously indicators. So those indicators will tell you whether these activities have been done. But coming back to the core solution, which is reduction in poverty, you're going to find that actually, when you have the indicator for that poverty reduction, then you see that it's easy now. Life becomes easier to measure whether indeed there is change, whether positive or negative. So it is a process, and it's not just a matter of coming up with a statement It doesn't just come, you don't just come up with a statement for an indicator, but you have to make sure that this indicator is actually smart, specific, measurable, attainable, time bound, and realistic. So that's just a snapshot of how key performance indicators are developed. What is the relationship between key performance indicators and data collection tools? If you fail to answer this question, then I don't know what else you can ever answer, because this is really the most simplest question. So the relationship between key performance indicator and data collection tools is that the tools are what you use to collect information on the key performance indicators. So these two actually coexist. And I must also mention that it would be quite strange if you have a data collection tool that is not even answering anything to do with the project. And that is why it's very important that as an M&D officer, make sure you just read the project document and collect information only in relation to the project document. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to present your findings, people are going to ask you questions. They're going to ask, yes, you've been doing M&D activities, but we want to find out whether the objectives were met. How do you answer that question without information? So it is critical you counter-check these things. What is the definition of a process indicator? So now, when you have these kind of questions, I have to tell you that one of the best ways to answer this question is to just break down this phrase into two. So here you have process and here you have indicator. So what is an indicator? An indicator is a variable that gives you the means to know whether change is actually happening. And what is a process? A process is simply that which has a number of activities leading up to a certain output. So for instance, let me give you a practical example of a process. Let's say you want to get yourself money from a bank. Okay? So for you to get that money, from the teller, the process you need to do is to fill in a certain slip, a withdrawal slip. You take that slip, fill it in. After filling it in, you simply take it to the tailor. The tailor analyzes it, verifies whether indeed that's your account number. The tailor will also ask you how much money is in your account, just to verify that it's really you who's withdrawing it from your own account. And then once that verification has been done, then the tailor will count the money and give you the money, and then off you go. So you've seen the process. So similarly, in monitoring and evaluation, you have these process indicators. So the indicator, for instance, like the example I gave you, could be that the number of notes counted by the tailor. All right. Or it could be number of verifications done by the tailor. You see? So you've seen that how the process indicator is coming out in this example. So you are simply trying to measure the processes. That is how a process indicator is defined. Question number 12. What is a monitoring and evaluation system? So you see, guys, this is one of the most interesting questions I've ever had to encounter. And I can give you a tip. When answering this question, break it down. Give all the components of a monitoring and evaluation system. List all the components down and elaborate on those components. So a monitoring and evaluation system, simply put, is a system. It's usually not good to use the same word system, but it is a system that has the following components: policies, procedures, budgets, staff, tools. All those things define the monitoring and evaluation system. If you look at our own bodies, for instance, if you look at the circulatory system, how many organs make up the circulatory system of the human being? One of the components is a heart. So if you look at the M&D system, that is how you should look at it. It is a holistic system that has all these different components, okay, such that without those components, you can't do the M&D. If you don't have M&D staff, how are you going to implement an M&D system? If you don't have money, a budget, how are you going to implement this system? If you don't have procedures, how are you going to do it? So that's what it is. It is a combination of those components. Okay, so once you elaborate that question, then you'll be given maximum points. It usually can be tough if this question is multiple choice, but from my past experience, it's not really the case. You can actually get an open-ended question where you do the explaining yourself. At what stage should monitoring take place? All right, this is another question which I usually face, or someone else can face this question. At what stage should monitoring take place? Well, monitoring should take place at the stage of implementation, okay, when activities are actually being implemented. And when you do that, what you're simply doing there is, anyway, before I even explain in that way, monitoring, you see, M&D consists of two things. You've got the monitoring, you've got the evaluation. So monitoring is continuous. So it's continuous throughout the project cycle. So for as long as the project is running, activities are being implemented, then you have to do this continuous tracking. So now the tracking is done to determine whether activities are actually taking place, and not only taking place, but doing so the right way. Because if you have activities that are not being done properly, it is through monitoring that you'll be able to determine whether changes should be made. Is it a capacity issue? Are the staff members not performing their jobs well? That is when you come in. So it is at the stage of implementation, at the stage of implementing activities, that monitoring should take place. Why should funders allocate resources to M&D activities? I was shocked to see this question come. Some of you might think it's an easy question to answer, but it came in the exam. So here they're simply asking you, in other words, why is M&D important? So you simply list down as many reasons you can think of as to why M&D is important. You can list 10 reasons, 12 reasons, 15 reasons. List as many reasons and try not to duplicate those reasons, but just list them so that they come out clearly and properly. Okay, so I won't list those reasons because this is a very easy question. Okay, but one reason why it's done is because you want to justify why funding should be given to an organization. You also want to improve project implementation. M&E is a learning system. So by implementing monitoring and evaluation, you're simply trying to improve on your learning, on your failures, on your successes. M&E answers this question: how, when, why, and how come, things like that. That is why there is this monitoring and evaluation. Okay, question 15. Which document can be used for the selecting of key performance indicators? If you are going to be selecting key performance indicators, as I have always mentioned, you need to refer to the project documents, M&D plan, M&D framework, or even I think basically that is it. All right. There is no harm also in referring to key performance indicators that are already recognized globally. Like on the sustainable development goals, you've got those indicators that have been set by the UN. You've got reduction in poverty. Okay, those are key performance indicators. If you go to the World Bank website, there are a lot of key performance indicators which you can refer to. So in terms of documentation, you can refer to a lot of documents to get examples of key performance indicators. But like I mentioned earlier on, it's always important to get the indicators that are only relevant to your project. That's all. Don't start reporting things that are not needed. A project is looking at poverty levels in a community, and you want to be reporting about how many people go to watch football or to watch soccer or to watch baseball or hockey. How does that relate to the project? It doesn't really relate. What are the people's hobbies? Most of them spend time going to the movies. If they have money, if they don't have money, they spend time at home. Is that related to poverty levels? It can be, but really sometimes you're just collecting too much information, but you have limited resources. Stick to what the project actually wants. So this is where I have to maybe cut a bit. So I also want to let you know that if you want to access the rest of the over 35 questions, you can click the link that you see on this screen. Make sure you enroll to get all these questions, because actually what happens is that when you take these questions, it's more like a test and you get to know how well you've done. All right. So I really hope that you enroll so that you can get the maximum benefit from all these questions. You can practice and become a guru in monitoring and evaluation, just as I have. So until we meet again, I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye.